it is an election night like no other.
Yes, just one race on the ballot, right? But it is a big one. Joining us for some analysis right now, political consultant Matt Klink, CSU Fullerton Associate Professor of Political Science Sarah Hill, and Dakota Communications Consultant Kerman Maddox. Three of you, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're going to ask you some big questions. And the first one for you, Kerman, what are we looking for? What are the early indicators as the polls close and the early results start to come in?
So I think what you want to look for, Sandra, is the percentage of votes cast early via absentee ballot. If Gavin Newsom comes in at 60% or above with the early returns on absentee ballots, he is ready for a big victory. I actually predicted he's going to win the absentee ballot vote, the election day vote, and I think he's going to win by at least 10%. I mean, numerical advantages to Democrats are just so significant. It would take almost a monumental effort for Larry Elder to prevail tonight.
Matt Klink, to you. Larry Elder came into the race late, immediately surged among the contenders. What do you see as his biggest obstacle tonight?
Larry Elder's biggest obstacle is just the lack of Republicans in the state. I think Kerman hit the note well, is that the Democratic turnout, which was in question about a month ago, is not in question now. The Democrats turned out early. The Republicans are turning out much more regularly on election day out of concerns about potential fraud on absentee ballots, which, by the way, are not at all widespread in the state of California. But Larry Elder's biggest problem is that there just aren't enough Republican voters, and there aren't enough Republican voters that turned out to vote for Larry Elder. And I think that's going to be his ultimate undoing. He will finish first, but Gavin Newsom is going to win the first question easily. I say 10 points at a low. I think it will be more than 10 points.
All right, again, we're waiting for the polls to close at 8 o'clock before those first results come in. Sarah, let's get you in on this conversation. We've talked about how important this is to the people of California and the future of our state residents, but we're also talking about the national implications of this race and what Democrats and Republicans are waiting to see what happens here in California tonight.
Yes, this is one of the key races that is being watched across the country to try to give us a sense of what might happen next year in the midterm elections. Just like Matt and Kerman said, I'm also expecting Gavin Newsom to easily prevail tonight. If he had lost, that would have been a big signal that Democrats are in huge trouble in midterms. What we're seeing is that California is sort of acting like California. We're not seeing a huge shift. So it's not telling us a whole lot about what to expect in the midterms at this point, other than there isn't a huge shift toward Republicans. California still is going to act like California.
As goes California, so goes the rest of the country. We've heard that for decades in politics. Thanks to our panel. Back with more on the panel right after this quick break.
Right back to our recall election night coverage.
And again to our panel of political experts. Sarah, let's start with you on the issue of getting, and as some would say with relative ease, getting a recall petition on the ballot. Do you see that as an issue that has traction going forward from potential change of the California Constitution?
Yes, this is one of the most interesting aspects of this recall, is that I definitely expect going forward that the state is going to be looking at reforming its recall process. Not every state even has a recall. Voters definitely want to keep it. It's not going to go away in California. We like to have control. But I think voters will be open to changes, such as raising the signature requirement. Other states actually have a much higher signature requirement to get a recall on the ballot than California does. So that's the sort of change I would expect to see. Right now it's 12%. It could go up maybe more like 20%. And that would make it much more difficult to get a recall on the ballot. Although it was already a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think that's a change we can expect to see.
Matt, question for you. There have been 54 recall attempts just here in the state of California. Only one was successful. We know back in 2003 when Gray Davis was recalled, replaced by another entertainment person with no experience in elections or campaigns. A little bit of a sort of a correlation to Larry Elder in this race, but things have really changed. We know that the characters involved in this, the candidates are different. What's different about voters since 2003?
Well, Sandra, the California electorate in 2021 looks nothing like it did in 2003. The Republican Party has significantly dropped in registration. The number of declined to state voters has increased, and the Democratic Party is 2 times the number of Republican Party in terms of voter registration. In addition, I mean, comparing Larry Elder and Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's like comparing an ant and an elephant. Arnold Schwarzenegger had 100% name identification before he even threw his hat into the ring. And Larry Elder was a conservative talk radio host who might have been known by some Republicans, but mainstream California voters certainly didn't know him. The only thing that he did do is he gave Gavin Newsom someone to run against. He actually helped Gavin Newsom in this election.
Yeah, and to pick up on Matt's point, to you, Kerman, acting as the foil for Gavin Newsom, Larry Elder, some would say, and making this not just an issue about the governor and his performance, but let's shift the focus off me a bit and say this is the alternative. Now I can compare, and I've got a punching bag.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Larry Elder was the gift from God. He was the Christmas gift that Gavin Newsom and Democrats were waiting for, because early on, frankly, Democrats were uninspired and unmotivated to get involved with the recall campaign. Once the alternative became Larry Elder, who most Democrats see as the African-American version of Donald Trump in style and ideology, not only, Micah, did they get motivated to vote, but they got involved in the No on Recall campaign. Larry Elder single-handedly changed the trajectory of the recall election that favored Gavin Newsom. So Gavin Newsom should basically get a GoFundMe account and do whatever he can and keep Larry Elder out there as much as possible, because Larry Elder, at the end of the day, is going to be principally responsible, more so than Gavin Newsom's record, for Gavin Newsom handily beating back this recall election.
Kerman Maddox, thanks for your insight. Sarah Hill, Matt Klink, thanks to both of you as well. There is a lot at stake tonight.
Indeed. To help us break it all down, we want to welcome back our panel, political consultant Matt Klink, Cal State Fullerton Associate Professor of Political Science Sarah Hill, and Dakota Communications consultant Kerman Maddox. Good of the three of you to be back with us tonight. Tonight's results, the first big indicator of the political direction of the country since President Biden took office. Matt Klink, do you see it at the end being close, or to the contrary here tonight?
No, I think it's the lead will close a little bit, but I mean, Micah, the state is so overwhelmingly Democratic. I mean, as of this morning, more Democratic voters had cast absentee ballots than both Republicans and independent voters combined. So even if Republicans have a record turnout today, which I don't think they're going to, the race will close a little bit, but it's at least a 10-point win for Gavin Newsom today.
An early prediction, Sarah Hill, let's go to you and talk about how this may go back and forth as the night goes on. We saw that in the presidential election. What are we looking for tonight that will sway the votes in either direction?
Yes. One of the interesting things that we're seeing in this election is that Democrats voted by mail, and we're seeing many more Republicans voting in person. So these first returns that we're seeing are the vote by mail ballots that already came in. So we're expecting them to be heavily Democratic. What we'll see as the night goes on is more of those in-person ballots will be counted. And that's why Republicans will start to catch up, just as Matt was saying. I don't expect either that they will catch up completely. We were saying earlier, more than 10 points is likely, 15% lead, something like that. But we will see Republicans catch up a bit as those ballots are counted. But that's an interesting difference we're seeing in the members of the different parties voting in different ways. And so that will change the results as the night goes on.
And picking up on Sarah's point there to you, Kerman, the value of an early vote being worth more to a candidate, so they don't have to spend the time and the resources courting that vote that they already know has voted for them, and they can better target their resources.
Yeah, I think the Gavin Newsom campaign did a really good job in terms of how they messaged this campaign. And then technically what they did is they really encouraged Democrats to get out there and vote by absentee ballot early. And from what I understand, Micah, Before the polls opened today, 54% of people who had voted absentee were registered as Democrats. So you got to think most of those votes were cast in his favor. As Matt said earlier, Larry Elder and the Republican Party's biggest disadvantage is there just not enough Republicans. And they haven't figured out a way. The way to win elections is you build groups of people together. You build coalitions. You get Republicans, you get independents, and you get conservative Democrats. They didn't do that. They went to the right. So they're going to have a high turnout among those conservative Republicans. But I think moderate Republicans are not going to turn out in large numbers. Independents, I think, are going to tilt towards Gavin Newsom. And Democrats are motivated, and I think they're going to turn out. I think at the end of the day, you're going to see an advantage for Gavin Newsom anywhere from 12 to 18 points. It's not going to be close.
All right, we are watching the ballots for you. Matt Klink, let's go back to you very quickly. We heard the governor just moments ago sort of criticizing people who are questioning the veracity of this election and saying, we heard the complaints yesterday from some people at the polls that their votes weren't being counted and they were concerned about that. What do you think of that and the remarks from the governor moments ago?
Yeah, Sandra, there are errors in every election. The question is whether one individual error is the case or whether it's a massive voter fraud. There has never been any documented case of massive voter fraud. California has been running absentee ballot elections for a long time. And Larry Elder even mentioned this yesterday. Fortunately, this vote is not going to be close enough where he can claim fraud. But no, it is very disturbing because I know county clerks across the state take great pride in running free and fair elections. So it really, as a consultant and on campaigns, it really is upsetting that they're making this argument, especially before the election is even really started.
All right, to the panel, stand by. We will be back with more coverage after this.
So we know there's a lot at stake tonight.
And to help us break it down, we bring back our panel, Matt Klink, Sarah Hill, and Kerman Maddox with us. Kerman, to you first. If Gavin Newsom does not win tonight and does not win by a wide margin, what does that say about the Democratic base here in California vis-a-vis the governor's performance?
So, Micah, I don't think we have to worry about this because on that question, not only is he winning, it is a landslide. In fact, Larry Elder is losing in Orange County, San Diego County, Ventura County, the Inland Empire. I don't know, Micah, if he's going to win any major population center. So I don't think we have to worry about that. What this says is, to me, not only is it a rejection and a repudiation of the Republican Party, but it's Trumpism and the fact the Republican Party doesn't recognize California is very diverse. Until they figure out a way to embrace people of color and move to the center, they're simply not going to win statewide elections in California, and they're irrelevant. There are simply too many Democrats, and decline of state or independents are about to surpass Republicans. At some point, they have to do a deep inside analysis and look at how the makeup of the state is, reach out to Latinos, reach out to African Americans, reach out to Asians, reach out to women, be more reasonable. Otherwise, they're just going to be irrelevant, Micah.
All right, from Kerman, let's go to you, Matt. And the question is, does this send some sort of message, even if the governor wins, that Democrats in the state of California and across the nation need to be on notice that some people are fed up and it's not going to be politics as usual?
Yeah, look, Gavin Newsom's going to win big tonight, but all is not rosy for the Democratic Party in California and certainly nationwide. I mean, you're going to get probably 35 to 40% of the Latino vote that will vote yes on the recall. That is a no vote against Gavin Newsom. So that sends a very powerful message that the Latino voting bloc in California is not unified, that they are just as California is, the Latino voting bloc is not unanimous in their support for one party or the other. I think that, in the long run, California is never, at least in the near-term future, going to be anything but the bluest of blue states. But no one should misread tonight's election results as a nationwide indicator. Joe Biden and the Democrats nationally have some significant problems, and Gavin Newsom's victory tonight may be a little bit of light, and otherwise it's going to be a cloudy 2022 for the Democrats.
All right, thanks to the panel. And Sarah, our apologies. We'll get to you on the other side here. We're back with more in a moment.
All right, so it's a historic night for California. We've got some major consequences.
And to help us break it all down again, we welcome back our panel. And as promised, Sarah, to you first. As you see the results come in, the overwhelming numbers for Governor Newsom, it's hard to underestimate the impact of the Larry Elder candidacy in terms of changing the contours of this race and ultimately, it appears, the trajectory of this race.
Yes, this has been really interesting to watch. This summer, we saw polling that it looks like the recall question was neck and neck. Maybe Gavin Newsom would be recalled. And then fairly quickly, it's turned around. And it seems like what happened is the second part of the ballot solidified, that it became very clear that the alternative was Larry Elder. And so if it's close and he might actually be recalled and the alternative is Larry Elder, I think what happened for a lot of Californians is they realized he's not their preferred candidate. He simply is too far to the right for most California voters. He's very much a politician along the lines of President Trump, and that just doesn't fit with public opinion in California. And so once that became solidified and voters realized that, I think that really turned the tide for Gavin Newsom. And he also framed it that way, as an election of me versus these Republicans against Trump Republicans. And once that was the way this election was framed, it became very clear for California voters. And we can see they gave it a very clear no.
Kermit Maddox, let's go to you. We've already heard from challengers John Cox and Kevin Faulconer tonight. Both of them sounded like they were giving in to this election, but certainly not giving up on the state of California. Do you expect to see any of the people that were on the ballot tonight on the ballot for the 2022 governor's race?
I do, Sandra. And let me just say, the exit polls show that people have real concerns about a number of critical issues: COVID, homelessness, affordable housing, jobs, a lot of those things. But elections fundamentally are choices. And until the Republican Party can come up with candidates that they get behind that have broader appeal than the Larry Elders of the world, because he simply doesn't have broad appeal, where you cobble together independents, Democrats, Republicans, as Mr. Cox and Mr. Faulconer said in their concession speeches, until Republicans can get in that position, they simply are not going to win statewide elections in California, and they will remain irrelevant. Elections are about choices. Voters had a choice. They rejected Mr. Elder. They reelected Gavin Newsom.
And as you speak, Kerman, the Associated Press wire crossing and projecting and declaring Governor Gavin Newsom the winner in the California recall election. Again, the Associated Press declaring Gavin Newsom the winner in the recall election. Not a surprise to the three of our guests. Matt, you have the first word on that reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that they waited 50 minutes to make that announcement. I think that we saw the writing on the wall just in terms of what the absentee ballot turnout was and the split on overwhelming Democrat participation. Micah, the really interesting thing will be to see the drop off between the no votes and the second question, because don't forget, Gavin Newsom urged Democrats to vote no and leave the second question blank. We could have millions of ballots with no candidate chosen for the number 2 spot, which shows how powerful Gavin Newsom's message was, that this was a Trump recall that he knows will not play well with the California electorate.
Matt, we're going to interrupt you, and I apologize.